This video is all about the new Select and Mask feature versus the old Refine Edge feature and some of what I hate about it. You'll find out what it is. And some of what I don't necessarily mind so much about it. And it all starts right now. Hey everybody, welcome into this video tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. I want to talk today about this new Select and Mask feature in Photoshop, specifically compared to Refine Edge, and just let you know how I kind of feel about the whole thing. I've gotten so many emails and like Facebook messages and Instagram messages and even some YouTube comments and tweets, and it's coming at me from everywhere. People saying, hey, what do you think about new Select and Mask? I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Some people, I really like it. What do you think about it? So I want to make this video. I want to share with you what I think about it and specifically compare it to the old Refine Edge, because after all, Select and Mask kind of just moseyed on into Photoshop and kicked Refine Edge out. Personally, I loved Refine Edge. I thought it was a very good tool, something that wasn't at all perfect. It needed some upgrade and some improvement, but it was very specific to what it did. You make a selection and you refine the edge of that selection. It was replaced by Select and Mask, which, as the name would entail, you should be able to create a selection. You select and mask using this tool in any number of ways. It doesn't quite work as advertised, and it came out about 4 or 5 months ago. I've spent the entire time, well, not the entire time, but I've spent much of the time. I haven't gone back to the old version of Photoshop. I've spent the time trying to use Select and Mask in my current workflow with photography and everything else that I'm doing, all the masks that I'm creating, kind of on a regular basis outside of all the tutorial stuff that I'm doing. And we're just going to look at some of what it can or can't do. So let's go ahead here and look at the first example. I've got basically this background. We're going to drop all of our subjects over this background. We're going to try to cut out this woman here. She's got some, frizzed out, teased out hair. It's over a light background. We're going to attempt to remove this muscle guy. We're going to do this dude in a blue suit, and also a Mccall, because this is kind of like a blurry background, and this is something that it's just not a person. So I don't want to just come in and do all people, because I know Select and Mask and Refine Edge, you're going to use them for all kinds of things: objects, surfaces, a sky, and people and objects. I really don't have a sky that I've included here, but I'm just trying to get a nice spattering of objects that we would use either one of these tools upon. So let's begin here with woman selection. So first and foremost, you can use this Select and Mask on a smart object. You can use it on a mask, anything like that. Go ahead to Select, and here it is, Select and Mask. Notice Refine Edge is gone. What happens? We get this new tool space. Great. If you see nothing, Command A or Control A, boom, it's going to flip our thing here so we can see what we are attempting to cut out or not. Now, the first thing we have is this first tool, and this first tool is called the Quick Selection tool. Now it's at the Add to Selection option. I actually want to make the brush a little bit larger, so I'm going to hit the drop-down menu, increase the size a bit, and I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and just begin subtracting selection. So I just subtract away all that sort of cream-colored background. Same thing over here. And real quick, guys, I just want to take a break from creating these selections and fighting back and forth between Select and Mask and Refine Edge, and let you know that I'm selling a course all about retouching images. A link just popped up in the screen up there. Over on my website, tutvid.com, you can pick up this course. I would be thrilled if you would pick it up. It helps support what we do here at tutvid.com. If you pick it up, great. If you don't pick it up, hey, keep watching, because the video is free. So, hey, why not? Let's get back to the video. And you can see it's doing some scary stuff to the edges. Now, I have to also add, I've watched every tutorial I can find on how to use this tool on the web, and I don't think that's just hyperbole. I legitimately have spent hours after hours looking for tutorials on how to use Select and Mask, and it genuinely started to worry me as I was struggling with this tool. All these tutorials I would find, it was always a model or a woman with maybe some complex hair, but they would select her or him or whoever over this very clean background, and that was it. I never saw complex backgrounds, and I like to do these selections. I like to do challenging stuff in these tutorials. I want to show you guys the best of the best of the best, and say, look, if you can select this crazy head of hair over a difficult background, hey, you know what? Doing it over a simple background is going to be relatively a piece of cake. There were literally tutorials I watched where the selection would be made, and you would never actually see them even move the object to a new background, which kind of like sends warning signals off in my head, like, whoa, something's not right here. Something's not going right. Look out. if you're kind of seeing the general direction of where we're headed here. So you can see it sort of chopped off her hair. It did all kinds of nasty things there. If I make the brush a little bit smaller, just using my bracket keys next to the letter P, hold down my Alt-Option key, I can try to knock out the hair in the middle. Over here, that's kind of a lost cause. I'm not going to worry about that quite yet. And then you would do something like grab the Refine Edge tool, which is this brush here, and maybe make your brush tool a little bit smaller, and you can paint over the edges. In fact, try to paint away all of that colored stuff or the colored background that's there, right? And you can just watch it, and it looks really terrible. But in fairness, you do have to just wait a moment, and then when you let go of the brush, Selected Mask will sort of render out what it thinks should be there. In fact, let's just paint over down here, try to get rid of some of that color, or maybe that's her skin down there. I'm going to undo that, Command or Control Z. Then we can come up here around her hair, and then up here around the top of the head, I really don't want to touch with this brush. It just does bad things to it. Although, I mean, we do kind of need, there is like hair edges. I do need to hit some of it up here, so I'm going to go through there. I'm not going to mess with this side of her head. Come down this side of her head, great. Come through the hair here. You can see, I mean, it's kind of like just paint over the edge, paint over hair, paint over the background, and the brush is kind of going to do its thing. You can see, hey, look at that. We recovered that whole bit of hair. Great. Let go, and no, not too bad. And then we have all of these other options over here. Edge detection, I'll go with a few pixels depending on the image, and just keep an eye on what it's doing to my photo. The global refinements, I almost never use these in Refine Edge. They, occasionally, I guess, if you have an object with a lot of straight lines that are, very contrasting, i.e. not hair. Sometimes the contrast slider is good. Sometimes the shift edge slider can be helpful because it'll just shift that edge in or out to remove a little bit of fringing if it's there. Feather, honestly, it's just not something I use, or if I do, it's a very, very rare. It's kind of just cheesy looking. Smooth as well. It's one of those things that, I don't know. It's not really something. I want precise selections. I don't want to do these kind of global smoothing type adjustments to my selection. The whole point of why I come to a Refine Edge or a Selected Mask is to get the most precise selection that I can. So I'm going to leave all of that there. Radius, 1 pixel looks all right. And you can also decontaminate the color. The problem that I've found specifically with decontaminating the color in Selected Mask is it tends to make a rather hard-edged line around the edge of your mask at a certain point. It really prevents you from being able to go in and tweak and edit the mask in any kind of usable way. The idea is you can hedge your bet on decontaminate colors and get a beautiful edge, and it's going to get rid of all that fringing and stuff, but it almost never works that way. This is also the case with Refine Edge, but for some reason Refine Edge didn't seem so... I don't want to say aggressive, but just like so destructive or something. Now, the cool thing about Selected Mask is you do get a preview of the Decontaminate Colors option. I usually always am going to output to a new layer with Layer Mask, whether I decontaminate colors or not. In this case, actually, I'm not going to decontaminate colors, and I'm just going to choose New Layer with Layer Mask, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. You can see we've got our new layer and Layer Mask. Now here, let's see what this image looks like if we drag it over this background. It's just a 16-bit image going over an 8-bit image, no big deal. I'm actually going to make this image a little bit larger. Command or Control T, hold down Shift and scale it up. And I mean, you can see the edges are, they're garbage. They're terrible. They are really, really bad. I don't know how else to put it. They're really bad. And it took me, 6-7 minutes to go through and explain that and actually do it. In actuality, it will probably take 4 or 5 minutes to make that selection, go over and do it. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is my results with Selected Mask are actually a bit better if I don't treat Selected Mask as a selection tool. It's just not a good selection tool. In virtually any case that I've used it, it just doesn't work well as a selection tool. If you think of it more as Refine Edge with some added features, you'll be a lot more satisfied with what you get out of it. It's a horrible selection tool. There's no way I can't mince my words. It's an atrocious selection tool. Case in point, let's go over to this male muscle guy. Check this out. If I go select a mask, this is a perfect kind of image for this kind of thing to happen with. And I'm just going to hold on my Alt-Option key and begin painting away this background. We're going to get to a point where, boom, his whole head disappears. All right, so I undo that. Let's do this again where we paint away part of the background. All right, we stop there. Good. We got a piece. Let's go ahead and drag down here. Good, we got a piece. The edge of his stomach is all jacked up. The edge of the pants is funky. Here under his armpit's all messed up. The entire edge here where this highlight is all screwed up. If we go ahead and try to, well, there we go. His head goes away again. Let's try this once more. His whole head disappears. All right, well, let's try to paint his head back in here. I let go of the Alt-Option key, and I just begin painting this back in. Whoops, what did I do? I accidentally dragged over the dark stuff up there. I'm afraid that if I get too close to the edge of his hair, it's going to paint away his head again. We've got this junk just hanging out here. I'm not really sure why. But I can tell the selection here at the top of his head is horrendous. There's fragments hanging out here. Let's try to stick with it here. Let's go ahead and grab underneath his arm here. Not bad. Cool. Let's come around on top of his head. Oh, wow, look at that. Basically, all of his body disappears. Let's try this again. There it goes again. All of his body. And this is, there's arm disappears. And, you know, essentially what I need to do is bring his arm back. I let go of the Alt or Option key there. It's really, really annoying. It's really frustrating. It instills zero confidence. The Select a Mask tool instills zero confidence in you when you're using it. It's not impressive, and it seems to be more frustrating than anything. So here's how I deal with an image like this. Much in the way as I would use Refine Edge. I go and grab the Quick Selection tool, and I make my selection with the Quick Selection tool, which still, thankfully, has been left in Photoshop, right? So I come in here, I make all my selections. Great. All right, went a little bit too big, so I can hold my Alt or Option key and just subtract away bits of the selection, right? And I'm not making entire chunks of his head disappear. Great. Let me just come into here. Va-va-voom. Come into there, and then I can expand this down his body. Great. And you can see I could then zoom in here in these areas where maybe Quick Selection is having some difficulty. And I can just go ahead and hit those areas, make sure that selection is expanded. It's not going to jump around. It's not going to make entire parts of his body just completely disappear. It's not going to do anything funky like that, so I appreciate that. Come down here, grab this arm, and whoop, we grabbed a little bit too much. But again, no worries, because I hold my Alt or Option key, and I just begin cutting this stuff away. And it's just a less frustrating experience in general, at least that I've noticed. So let's go ahead and trim that away, and then we'll just make sure we extend this down over his hand. Great. And we may need to zoom in. And just like Select a Mask was having difficulty with some of these highlights, so is the Quick Selection tool. That's fine. We can go over them just like that. And if we get any areas that are like this, well, sometimes the Auto Enhance, I've got Auto Enhance ticked on. Sometimes that'll kind of snap back into place. And cool. There we go. Probably about close enough. Maybe I'll try to trim this away on the back of his wrist up here. There we go, something like that. And also here on his head, I'll just make sure I expand to get that hair. And then the chin isn't quite perfect, but we can kind of clean that up a little bit later. So if I go into Select a Mask with a selection, it tends to just work better. So let's go up here and choose Select and Mask. And we've got ourselves, a decent little selection. When we begin with a selection, we have something nice. What I'm going to do, because I know I'm going to push the radius up a little bit when we try this in Refine Edge, you can see, by the way, if I push edge radius up too much, it does, kind of some bad things to the edges. We start to get this line up there all the way around, and this is where you see the destructive nature of Select and Mask. Now, you could argue 30 pixels edge radius maybe is too much, or edge detection there, the radius for the edge detection, I should say. But the fact of the matter is, it's not helping. And if it's doing that at 30 pixels, what's it doing at 3, 4, 5? How much of that edge is it just making? I mean, you can see at 30 pixels, it's literally making the edge partially transparent. I mean, all the way around here, it's cutting off part of his shoulder. We've got issues all along the bottom of the tricep, all the way up the side of his arm. I mean, virtually every straight edge all along the side of the shorts, they're semi-transparent. I mean, just imagine if we were transposing this. Thankfully, we're transposing it over to a document that has a dark background. That's going to be a huge saving grace. But if we were trying to make a selection of this to adjust the color of his skin tone, or to move him over to a lighter background, or any number of areas where you want to make a precise selection of an object like this guy over this background, I mean, you can see this whole edge here. I can even bring up a magnifying glass. You can see that edge is just being torn to shreds. Well, really, these edges, and here out along the edge of this arm. I mean, an incredible amount of damage. So we're gonna kill the edge radius, because that's not doing us any favors. What I will try to do is use the Refine Edge brush, and we'll try to paint over his hair a little bit. And you can see it looks really scary, but just hang with it for a second. It cleans itself up in a minute. We're gonna go over the hair and just try to get a better selection of the hair. And you can see it just looks really, really abysmal. It's going to look a little bit better when we take it out and put it over the background, but I mean, you can literally see where there's a really hard edge. Now, Refine Edge also will do this kind of effect, and you'll see it in a moment, but this is really, really bad. I mean, this is just an extreme case of it. Now, if I did want to go over and I say, hey, look, there's a little bit of the background there. I want to paint that away. all it does is gives me this gray wispy haloing, and now his wrist is semi-transparent. We've got this like matte along the edge of his arm here. If I paint over that, all we have now is a bicep that's semi-transparent, as well as a forearm that's also semi-transparent, again along the bottom of the triceps. I mean, you're getting the point here. This refined edge brush is doing a huge amount of damage, and forget about along the edge of the pants, which this was one of the big complaints I had in a tool like Refine Edge, and I'm going to show this to you in Refine Edge, where going along an edge like this, it's really difficult to do with the Refine Edge brush in the Refine Edge command in the older versions of Photoshop. But Select the Mask didn't improve it. It actually made it worse. And I don't think like an improved tool is supposed to do that. Could be wrong, but I don't think that's the way it's supposed to work. I'm going to hit Command-Control-Z to undo that. So I really can't do that. Here along the darker edges of his fingers, I mean, you can see what it's going to do to his fingertips. They're all semi-transparent. Really bad. Really not at all what I want. If we want to clean up this highlight along the edge of his arm, it actually doesn't bring the highlight in. It starts to make it disappear more. The exact opposite of what I want to do. So let's go ahead here and choose to output this to a new layer with Layer Mask. I would decontaminate the colors as well, and you can see it did a little bit to the edges, but I've found, again, when I decontaminate the colors here and select the mask, it makes the mask virtually impossible to work with, and that's the only way you can kind of make these selections with Select a Mask work at all, is by finagling the mask, using a brush, set the soft light blend mode. We'll cover a little bit of that in a moment. Let's go ahead and output this to a new layer with Layer Mask. Hit OK. I'm trying to speed through this a little bit because I don't want to spend all day on this. And we can see just part of what hurts when you use Select the Mask is an edge like this up here on the hair. It just instills like zero confidence. I mean, zero confidence. It seems like a tool made for an amateur, but Photoshop is a tool made for professionals, or at least people that think they're professional, people that pay for a professional tool set. I'll put it to you that way. And Select the Mask just... it's hard for me to get behind a hairline that looks like that. All right, let's go for this here. Drag it over to the background. Oh, look at that. I already have a copy of him over here. It's as if I pre-ran this and checked it out beforehand. Whoops. Let's grab him and drag him down a little bit. And you can see that, like I said, the hair doesn't look awful. But we know that there's that dirty little secret lying in wait up there. And as I zoom in, sure enough, you can see there is a line of black underneath the hair. And it's very, very bad, including the fact that it looks like we've given him like a bizarre balding haircut right in the middle. But other than that, like down here, it got good detail, got decent detail around his skin. Again, we have some matting that we need to get rid of. We can adjust that. We're missing chunks of his forearm there. We're missing a little piece of his tricep. Down here, this hand needs a bit of work. We're not even seeing the knuckles, where I know there's probably even more work to be done. There's generally matting that needs to be done. That's to be expected. You would have had that with the Refine Edge tool as well. I'm not necessarily upset about that. That's a quick fix. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. The chin's a little bit messy, as is the eyebrow, but we didn't really hit that with the Refine Edge brush. I think it would have helped. Again, I have very little confidence in the tool, so I can't say for sure that it would help. All right, how do we get Refine Edge? As far as I know, you can't get it in Photoshop CC 2017. I had someone on YouTube tell me that you could get it, but I haven't found a way to get it. I'm sure there's got to be a way, but if you have Creative Cloud, you can revert and reinstall an older version of Photoshop. Now, don't worry, it doesn't mean you have to get rid of your newest version of Photoshop. You can run the two simultaneously. In fact, I have Photoshop CC 2015 just before the Select the Mask update open on my computer right now. But first, let me show you how to get it. So here on the Mac, you can just click on your Creative Cloud icon. On the PC, your Creative Cloud icon is down like in your toolbar next to the clock and all the little icons that cluster down there. Under the Apps section, you want to go all the way down to the bottom, and you have this Find Additional Apps section where you can select the drop-down, and down at the bottom, you can choose View Previous Versions. Now, when you do that, Photoshop appears at the top of my list. I can select the Install button, and it says, hey, what version would you like to install? If I'm pining for the old days and I want to do a tutorial in CS6, boom, I click that. It installs CS6 on my system, and I still have my other version of Photoshop as well. So that's kind of cool. So I installed this version right here. It's version 16.0, if I can get the drop down to stay open. CC 2015, version 16.0. It's right before the Select and Mask update came out. So I install that, and then it appears up here in previous versions where I have, sure enough, Photoshop CC 2015. How do I open it? Well, I just click that, and it opens it up. Now, I already have it open. See this? Adobe Photoshop CC 2015. And then over here, I've got Adobe Photoshop CC 2017. So back here, I have the same photo open. I have the same background open. Now, I've made a selection over him over here. It's somewhat rough. You can see the highlight here is not as fully selected as it should be. In fact, I'll grab my my magic wand tool, and I'll just make sure I select that little highlight edge of his forearm. And basically, I'm going to do the same thing that I just did in CC 2017 with Select a Mask. I've always had to make this selection with the quick selection tool. I just find that if I'm going to use select and mask, that's how I'm going to do it. Now, I just started going back and using Refine Edge maybe like a week ago, so I haven't been even doing this for that long. I've been struggling with select and mask for months, as I mentioned earlier in this video. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. All right, close enough to a decent selection. Let's go select, and there she is, Refine Edge. I'm so happy to see it back. And just as like a side rant real quick, you know, when Adobe introduced field blur and iris blur, they didn't get rid of Gaussian blur. I really don't understand why they got rid of Refine Edge. I really don't. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. When you introduced the healing brush, you still had the clone stamp tool. Why get rid of Refine Edge? I don't know. You know, it's not a selection tool. It's a refinement tool. You begin with a selection and you can refine it in Refine Edge. Select and mask, you would think it's a full-on selection workspace, which is at least how it was sort of touted. You can't make selections in it. All it is an edge refining selection workspace. So why not just leave the old Refine Edge as well? For crying out loud, we still have the old Save for Web legacy dialog, which is like a behemoth of a dialog box, despite having the much faster, much more powerful export dialog. So why not just leave Refine Edge? I don't know. I don't really understand it, but hey, that's my little just side tangent for a second there. All right, Refine Edge. We've got our little red overlay, looking beautiful as ever. It just kind of like warms the cockles of my heart when I see this, especially after struggling with the new select and mask as much as I have. All right, we're going to turn on a little radius here. Radius action about 3.7-ish. All right, I'm going to grab my edge, refine edge tool, excuse me, right here. I'm going to leave my adjust edges. These are all those global selections we have in select and mask. I don't like them here either. We can just, look at this. We can paint over the edge of his little chin here. Look at that. We're not missing parts of his chin. If I say, you know what, down here, I want to get his shoulder back, I can paint over the edge of the shoulder, and look at that. It actually just brings the shoulder back. It doesn't make the shoulder semi-see-through. We can go up here over on the wrist where we're having trouble. We can paint over that edge for really no reason. We can paint over the back of the wrist, and we're not just making our wrist transparent. Hey, look at this. There's that piece of the tricep that's missing. I can paint over that, and I'm really painting over it roughly because I'm not even using my tablet. And I get it back here on the edge of his body. I can just paint over that. You're going to see, look at that. We can get it. Now here, let's do a little comparison on the edge of the pant, right? Or the edge of his trunks here. I paint over it. I still get a bad edge, but look at how much better that is than what I had with Select and Mask. I mean, look at that edge. Select and Mask looked positively atrocious. This is at least usable, albeit still not good enough for me, so I'm actually going to undo that. Same thing over here on the edge of the trunk. I know it's not going to work. I know I'm going to have to go in with the brush and clean that up here on the edge of the finger. Look, I can paint. It just knocks it away. I don't get a bunch of knuckles that are semi-transparent. Well, there I get kind of some semi-transparency, but not nearly to the extent that I was getting. I can click in there and get that cleaned up. I knocked away the little bit that was hanging out. I can add that little hair on the side of the wrist to the selection. Let's see what happens if I paint over this highlighty area in an effort to get more of that in my selection. Look at that. It cleans up the edge a little bit. Then it does a little bit of damage, but not nearly what Select and Mask does. And then last but not least, let's grab the eyebrow here, and then let's go up here and check out the hair. Now, I already know the hair is going to be somewhat similar, but I will stand by the fact that it will not be nearly as bad. And you can see, I can already see some of the damage that it's going to do up in there. But let's go ahead and we'll output this new layer with layer mask, hit OK, and you can see, yeah, I mean, we've got an edge in there, but it's not this big giant wavy edge like we had, and we can bring some of this back with our mask. So I can grab this now, drag it over to my background, bring this guy in place, drop him in there. We don't want this big dip in the middle of his head like we have with the other image. And what I can do, and this is the trick that I was talking about earlier, where you take the brush tool, you set the blend mode to soft light, and now let's take a look at the mask. I'm going to Alt-Option-click the mask. So I want to make some of this kind of fuzzy gray area a little bit darker and some of the white areas a little bit more white. So if I'm painting over the black areas, I want to paint with black. And when I have my brush set to the blend mode of soft light, I'm going to give it a little bit of a softer edge here. You can see it's really not going to mess with the white areas of my image. It's just going to paint away some of the black stuff. I'm going to Alt-Option-click to see what kind of damage I'm doing out here. I'm going to set my foreground color to white. I'm going to paint in some of the white areas. That looks like it's just giving me halo. So I'm going to go back to my brush tool. I'm going to paint with black again. I am going to paint over this area with black. I'm just looking to get rid of that halo. And this is exactly, by the way, how I would get rid of the color fringing and things like that that I have with the Select and Mask version. In fact, let me jump over to the other version of Photoshop. Here it is, 2017. So I said there was like some fringing up here around his wrist, right? So I would select the mask. I would go to the brush tool, make sure I've got it set to the blend mode of soft light. This is so trippy because now I'm over in Photoshop CC 2017 again. I've got a big soft edge brush. I'm going to make that brush head a little bit smaller. I'm painting with black because I want to cover up this little fringe. And you can see I can just paint over it, and it pretty much is going to get rid of it with relative ease. I might need to tweak it just a little bit, but very easily you can get rid of stuff like that. I'm not going to fault select and mask for that. You can see I can get rid of some of that, actually some of the damage that the Refine Edge brush did for me. So I can do that. This was the kind of stuff, though, that we had to do with Refine Edge anyway, so it's, you know, it's no big deal for me to go in and have to do it. I can paint away and fix up the hair. And you can see select the mask actually has given me much less hair to even work with. Over here in Photoshop CC 2015, the hair is still not perfect, being dark hair over the dark background, but at least I'm not getting rid of massive chunks of the hair when I paint it away with my soft light brush. Over here in CC 2017, done with the select the mask, when I start painting this away, I mean, you can see here, look at this. We're just giving him this horrible haircut. I mean, look at that bit of hair right there, right? That bit of hair right there. And now, whoops, let me undo that. I'm going to go back over to CC 2015 and look at that hair. Look at how much more full that bit of hair is, that tuft of hair. So much more of it is left. And the same for the rest of his hairline. That black, we might need to go in there and do some manual brushing just because of the nature of the dark hair over the dark background. But like, let's just compare it. And you can see, I mean, there's a little bit more texture, but there's so much less actual hair we're missing. I mean, look at how much of his hair we're missing when I bring the mask back. It's really quite remarkable. We are missing hair here in the Refine Edge as well, but again, not nearly as much as Select and Mask, and I would expect Select and Mask to be significantly better considering the fact that it's a full-on workspace built for making and refining selection edges. All right, that's enough with the muscly guy. Let's move along to Male Blue Suit. So now this is an image that when I was playing around with it, Select and Mask actually does a better job if you create the selection correctly than the old Refine Edge command does. So let's just take a look at it here in Select and Mask. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my quick selection tool. I'm going to just drag over this fella. All right, and here what we're going to do, we're going to go select, and mask, and I'm not going to mess with any of the edges anywhere. I already know this tool is abysmal at straight edges. I'm basically going to rely on my quick selection tool to have done a good job there. I might increase my edge radius a little bit, but I mean, I'm very, very tentative doing that because, again, the level of faith I have in this tool is quite low. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and grab the edge selection, or I'm sorry, the edge refinement tool, the refine edge tool, and I'm just going to begin painting over his hair like this. Now the hair is particularly tricky because there's all that bluish-gray background in between all of his complicated mess of hair on his head, or I should say, you know, he's got great hair, but it's just pretty complex, right? So we're going to paint over this. Great. Let's paint right down here along the jacket, which is a little scary to do because I know what this tool does to those straight lines. And then let go, and look at that. It actually does a really good job. If we zoom in, we can see a lot of this is transparent. I'm not like 1000% thrilled with it. I can try increasing edge radius a bit and see if that improves it. It seems to actually kind of make the issue a little bit worse. I can try decontaminating colors. You can see that kind of fills out the hair a little bit more. I actually find, again, in this case, decontaminate color does us no favors. I'm not even going to tick it on. I'm going to output new layer with layer mask. I'm going to hit OK. All right, now I'm going to compare this image head to head with Refine Edge, and I want you guys to see the difference. Just so you know, I am trying to give Select and Mask here a fair shake. You can see there's an awful lot of blue up there. You know what? Let's jump back into this and do a version with decontaminate color. Let's just see what that looks like. I'm going to load this mask as a selection. Just Command or Control click on it. Hide that cutout background layer, turn on our original background layer, go back to select and mask. We're working with this much more complex selection. I'm just going to tick on decontaminate color, and you can see it's going to bring back some of his hair a little bit. New layer with layer mask. Great. Let's drag this sucker over into the background. Let's just see what decontaminate color has done. I mean, look at that. Look at the difference. So in this case, decontaminate color, I was wrong about it. It actually does quite a bit to help what we're doing. But where it's not going to help us is when we come in here with that brush. You can see all that kind of fuzzy, or not fuzziness, that flatness where there's really no texture in the hair. You know, we're doing as much as we can here. It's not ideal, but it's obviously much better than this bluish-gray halo that we've got going on over there. If I grab my brush tool, I set my foreground color to white there, painting with soft light. You can reduce the opacity as well if you're just looking to gently kind of coax some of the color and fullness back into the edges of the hair. But we're very limited in what we can do, because if I shut the mask off, you can see this is what that Decontaminate colors has done to our edges. So we can't just go in willy-nilly and start painting the edges away, because we start to get all of this ragtag mess. So we got to be careful when we're painting away and trying to fill in our edges. All right, so there is Select and Mask with Decontaminate colors on this very complex head of hair. It did a good job. We didn't let it touch our sharp edges. Not bad. Let's jump over to the newer version of Photoshop. We're going to make our selection here. Great. Come right through here, grab his jacket. You can see this tool seems to be working just fine, just as we've always expected it to work, right? Thankfully, it's still a tool that we have. All right, there we go. I'm going to hold down my Alt Option key, click once under this arm, click once under that arm, and then click once here beneath the crotch of the pants, maybe a couple times beneath the crotch of the pants, maybe even a third time, and it looks like I'm going to have to do it a fourth time. There we go. Something like that. I shouldn't be too concerned with all the way down there. The magic of the tool is up here in the hair. Let's make sure we get all the hair selected. There we go. All right, we're going to go Select. Well, there it is. Select, Refine Edge. Great. Again, I'm not going to mess with the edges of the jacket. I'm going to go refine, or the edge detection radius. About 4 is good. I've got my, my brush selected. I'm going to zoom in on the hair a little bit. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger using my bracket keys right there to the right of the letter P. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint over his hair. So you can see I paint over it. It looks like it does a really remarkable job. And it is pretty impressive. It's still impressive what it can do. This tool has always been impressive when it comes to selecting hair like this. All right, we come right through here. Boom. We select all of that. We can choose Decontaminate color. Why not, since we already did it? I'm going to leave the amount at the default of 50%. Hit OK. There we go. We have it. Doesn't look too bad. I'm going to drag it over here over the background, and this is where we're going to see that it is, in fact, not nearly of the precision that something like Select and Mask has. So you can see it's just not nearly as good. I can grab the brush, paint with black to try to get rid of some of this, but what ends up happening is it's the bluish grayish color it's so pervasive and so just like there in your face that you end up getting rid of a lot of those kind of flyaway hairs, and even make some of the hair, the edges of the hair, a little bit crunchy while you paint away some of that stuff. It almost makes it look like his hair is matted down, right? Compare it to this head of hair here, and it's quite a big difference. So here's an area where Select and Mask actually did a really good job. But then here, if we come to our final image, this Mccall, let me just shut these two images off. Here's an area where, once again, Select and Mask just falls totally flat on its face. Let's go ahead and make this selection. I'm going to compare this one and Refine Edge as well. And this, you have an image of this bird, all multiple colors, over a blown-out, bokeh-filled background. And, something that you would get, you go to the zoo, you get this shot, and you want to cut it out, and you want to put it, I don't know, on your shoulder, or do something stupid with it, or a client needs it for their beer commercial or something. So you go ahead and you make your quick selection. We already know that the selection tools in Select and Mask are trash, so we're not going to even try that. I'm going to just zip away my little corner there. All right, so we're going to go ahead with this. We go Select and Mask. I'm going to try to fly through this somewhat quickly. Only thing left to do, I can increase the edge detection radius a bit, maybe even turn on Smart Radius. Let's see what we get. I'm not really seeing too much. There's a little bit of change. I'm going to go with the Refine Edge brush, and I'm going to go ahead and paint over these edges and just say, look, hey, Refine Edge, you pick up all the pieces. See, it's going in and just getting all the stuff that I missed. Great. All right, we're having some issues there where there's green with the background, green with his feathers, having some issues. I really should know better than going over the beak. In fact, I'm not even going to try to touch the beak because that's going to just do crazy damage. And then I come down along his feathers here, and I can just see it's doing all kinds of nasty. I'm going to go ahead and output this to New Layer with Layer Mask, hit OK, and I'm just going to drag this over on top of my library background. Now I can see, especially if I scale it down a little bit so I can take a closer look at what's going on here, and I can even bring up my little loop, we can see that the feathers here on the top of the head completely jacked up. It's really messy here around the top of the head. We've got a straight edge there because that's the edge of the photo. And then all along this feather, it's kind of messy. It's either sharp edged or pieces are cut out, or we've got color fringing. It's not really good. It's not a professional cut. So over here, let's go ahead, Command or Control O, and I'm going to open up the Mccall JPEG. And we're going to do the same exact thing. It's boring watching me do two of the same thing over and over and over again, isn't it? But I think it's very important to just look at this and furthermore hope that somebody at Adobe looks at this, or you can arm yourselves with this and say, look, the tool is not really all that it's cracked up to be. Certainly if it's supposed to be a major leap in technology, I think, hopefully at least what I'm showing today, it's definitely not that. And my personal experience over the last couple months has told me that. All right, I'm just going to clip away this little corner down here. There we go. We've got our rough selection. We'll make sure I include the green. There we go. And let's take this guy in and do some refine edge to him. So what I'm going to do, I'm again going to take on Smart Radius. I'm going to go to about 7, just like I did with the other one. And I'm going to paint over the edges of this. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the edges of his feathers here. Just go ahead and paint right up over these. Cool. First thing I notice is I'm not getting a huge chunk of green out there, which is nice to see. Come down here along these feathers. And then I'm just going to paint down along these. Whoop, I missed part of them right there. All right, great. I can even paint along these feathers. I'm not concerned about straight edges with this tool because it just doesn't do the kind of damage that the other Refine Edge brush seems to be inclined to do. Whoops, anytime you run it along a straight edge. We'll go ahead and output this again. New layer with layer mask. No decontaminating colors. We're going to stick with that. Hit OK. And we have our new bird here. Let's drag him over to our background, and let's size him down a little bit. Let me zoom out just a touch. Size him down. It's about the same size, right? Go ahead and commit that. And now I can start checking this out with the loop. You can see it's a little semi-opaque. Well, I don't want to do that. A little semi-opaque, but again, this is the kind of thing that I can take my brush, set to a mode of soft light, set my foreground color to white, and I can paint in any little opaqueness. Oops, I'm actually painting on the Mccall. Make sure you have the mask selected. Let's try that again. I can paint that in and get rid of stuff that's hanging out around the edges very, very easily. You can see, just clean that edge right up. Clean that little haloing right off of there. The little fringing, I'm sorry. But let's take a closer look here. All of these feathers. All right, let's just look at these feathers here. The blue feathers along the back of his neck. All right, you see the precision that Refine Edge has given us. Let's go back over here, and we can look here at what we've got. Let me zoom in just a little bit more. You can look at what we've got, and you can see there's much more transparency on the edge. The edge has been cut away, and certainly when you get here to the top of his head, I mean, it's a totally different ball game. I mean, completely different ball game here on the top of his head. We've got beautiful soft feathers with some nice edge transparency and a great cut. And the same thing here along the front of his wing. We got a little bit of work we need to do here with Refine Edge. Again, stuff that we're just used to doing if we're working with Refine Edge. But then here we look at it with Select and Mask, and it's actually worse. Like, the work is still there to be done, but it is actually worse with the newer, more advanced tool. It is worse than what we had here with the older Refine Edge. In fact, you can see here when I jump back and forth, you can see a whole chunk of his head is cut off. Piece of the wing is missing, right, when we go back and forth. So I don't know. It's really up to you and how you use Select and Mask, but I certainly hope that this video has helped kind of clear some of this stuff up. There's definitely ways to work with Select and Mask, but the tool itself inspires... It doesn't inspire me at all, and it certainly inspires no confidence in me. And the worst thing about it is the fact that I don't have Refine Edge there. It wouldn't even be such a rub. It would be a tool that I, quite frankly, would probably almost never use. It is useful in some cases, though. I mean, you saw the guy with the blue suit image. It legitimately did not even a little bit of a better job. It did a much better job extracting that particular head of hair. But with the woman who we first extracted, it did a worse job. With the bodybuilder, it took more time and did a worse job. And with the Mccall, it did a far worse job in terms of making a quick selection. It was a very fast selection, both with Refine Edge and with Select and Mask. And that's without even getting into the selection brush tool in Select and Mask, which is... it's a bad tool. I hate to say it because I know that a lot of work goes into making this stuff. But people are paying for this, and if you're like me, you've been frustrated to a crazy degree with regard to using this tool. So yeah, I mean, I think the answer is clear. The Refine Edge is far superior. Not far superior. Quite a bit superior to Select and Mask. It's certainly a more well-rounded tool, easier to use in a multiplicity of situations, and it just yields a better result a lot of the time. Ideally, I would just like to see both tools in Photoshop, because it certainly, at the very least, would be nice to have the options. Hey, this doesn't really look great with Select and Mask. Let me go try it in Refine Edge, or vice versa. I would love that. I would love to have that feature. But seeing all of Refine Edge go away, I really wanted to love it. It was something when I first saw it, I did have some worries when I first used the Paint Away the Edge brush and it did terrible things, like not what I saw in the Adobe videos. I was kind of concerned, but I thought, maybe I just need, I need to learn how to use it, right? So I'm going to give it time. Well, I've given it time. It hasn't gotten better. It hasn't gotten any better. In fact, all I'm finding are more weaknesses. It's just not as good as Refine Edge, and Refine Edge was far from a perfect tool. Again, let me reiterate, it was far from a perfect tool, but this is worse, and it's the newer tool. And that's what's so frustrating about it. I would expect that it would do what Refine Edge did and maybe a little bit more, and I'd be thrilled. and I like where Select and Mask is headed, but right now it is not. It's not there. It's an amateur tool in a professional application, and it's not. It does not create good selection. So I hate to go on and on and on for so long about this. So for Select and Mask, and for fixing Select and Mask and making it the best selection tool in the history of Photoshop and its illustrious 25, 26 years, and on and on and on and on and on, versus the good old Refine Edge tool, which there's a little part of my heart that's in love with it, especially being stuck with Select and Mask for these past years. For all of that, that is it. Get it, got it, good. Nathaniel Dodds, Untitled.com. I'll catch you in the next one.